The invitation arrived on a quiet Tuesday evening, placed carefully on the dining table as if it were something delicate, thick ivory paper, gold lettering, my wife's company logo embossed at the top like a seal of importance. Annual Executive Gala, it read. +1 included. She stood a few steps away, pretending to scroll through her phone, her excitement sounding rehearsed. You should come, she said too quickly. It'll look nice. That word stayed with me, Luke. Not feel, not mean something. Just look. I picked up the invitation, running my fingers over its edges. It was elegant, expensive, carefully designed to impress. Everything about it felt warm and welcoming except the room I was standing in. Our apartment felt colder than usual. The silence between us was heavy, stretched thin by things neither of us wanted to say out loud. Is it important? I asked. She didn't look at me. Yes. Very. Her phone buzzed. She turned away immediately, lowering her screen like a reflex. When I stepped closer, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Lately, none of her smiles did. You'll wear a suit, she added, finally looking at me. Something simple. Don't stand out too much. These people are very particular. That was another strange thing. She had never cared what I wore before, never tried to manage how I spoke or where I stood. Now, it felt like she was rehearsing me like I was a prop she needed to place correctly. I nodded, telling myself I was overthinking. I always did that, she used to say. I told myself trust meant ignoring the small discomforts. That love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt even when something felt wrong. But the red flags were there. Short replies, conversations that ended the moment I walked into a room. A hand that once reached for mine now stayed glued to a phone. At night, she turned away before I could touch her, claiming exhaustion that never seemed to fade. Still, I said yes. Because marriage teaches you to doubt your instincts before you doubt your partner. Because part of me hoped I was wrong. Because I wanted to believe the distance between us was temporary, not deliberate. As she finally smiled and said, "It's just a party," I noticed how tightly she held her phone, how carefully she avoided my eyes. And for the first time, a quiet thought settled in my chest. This night isn't about celebration. It feels like a stage. And somehow, I've been invited to stand in the spotlight without knowing the charges against me. The hotel lobby looked like it belonged to another world, one built on glass, marble, and quiet confidence. Crystal chandeliers hovered above us, reflecting off polished floors that seemed clean to walk on. Men in tailored suits laughed easily. Women in elegant dresses moved like they owned the space. Everyone looked like they knew exactly where they belonged, except me. The moment we stepped inside, my wife's posture changed. Her shoulders straightened, her smile sharpened, and without realizing it, she let go of my hand. Not dramatically, just enough to send a message. She scanned the room, already searching for familiar faces. "I'll just say hello to a few people," she said, her voice light. "Don't wander too far." Then she was gone. I stood there with a glass of water in my hand, suddenly very aware of my suit, my shoes, the way I didn't quite match the room's unspoken standard. Conversations flowed around me, but none reached me. When I nodded politely at strangers, they returned the gesture with the kind of smile reserved for background noise, acknowledging, but dismissive. This was her world, and I was clearly a visitor. I watched her across the room as she laughed with her colleagues, touching arms, leaning in. She looked comfortable, confident, like someone who had practiced belonging here. No one asked who I was. No one cared. That's when Victor Hale entered the circle around her. He didn't need an introduction. His presence did that for him. Tall, perfectly groomed, voice calm but commanding, people naturally shifted to make space when he spoke. My wife laughed louder when he joined them. Too loud? I felt it then. The imbalance, the way power reshapes behavior. A few minutes later, he approached me, glass in hand, smile perfectly measured. "So," he said, glancing briefly at my suit, "you're the husband, not her husband." "Just the husband." "Yes," I replied. He chuckled softly. "She's very impressive at work. We demand a lot from our people here." His eyes flicked past me, already bored. "I hope you don't mind sharing her time. These events can be overwhelming for outsiders." Outsiders? The word landed gently, but it was sharp enough to cut. People nearby smiled politely, waiting for my reaction. I nodded, calm on the surface, heat rising underneath. Victor raised his glass slightly, as if he'd just delivered a harmless joke. But as he walked away, I felt it. That wasn't curiosity. It wasn't courtesy. Victor's attention toward me felt deliberate, like he wasn't just noticing me, but measuring me. Victor didn't wait long before turning me into entertainment. It started subtly, the way cruelty often does when it wears a smile. He gathered a small circle of coworkers near the bar, my wife standing just to his side, her hand resting lightly on her glass. When he noticed me nearby, his eyes lit up, not with warmth, but with opportunity. "Hey," he said loudly, waving me over. "Come join us. We were just talking about career paths." The emphasis wasn't accidental. I stepped closer, every instinct telling me to stay quiet. Victor rested his elbow on the counter, looking me up and down as if I were a resume he'd already decided to reject. "So, Ion," he said, grinning, "what line of work are you in again?" I answered simply, calmly, "No details." He laughed. "Not hard, just enough to invite others to join in." "Ah, one of those. Must be nice. Less stress, fewer expectations. He turned to the group. Some people really value simplicity. A few chuckles followed. Polite at first, then louder. Someone added, "Hey, as long as it pays the bills, right?" Victor raised his glass. "Exactly. Not everyone needs ambition." I glanced at my wife. She smiled, tight, uncertain. Then she laughed softly, nervously, like she was trying to smooth the moment instead of stopping it. That laugh hurt more than Victor's words. It told me everything I needed to know about whose side she was on. Victor wasn't done. "You know," he continued, "being married to someone climbing the corporate ladder can be intimidating." He looked directly at me now. "But I suppose you're used to standing in the background." The laughter came easier this time. I felt it then, the heat in my chest, the tightening of my jaw. Every part of me wanted to speak, to end it. But I didn't. I simply nodded, taking a slow sip of my drink, giving him nothing. My silence seemed to amuse him even more. He leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound friendly. "Don't take it personally. We all play our roles." That's when I understood. This wasn't casual teasing. This wasn't clumsy humor. Victor enjoyed this, the imbalance, the audience, the way he could reduce someone with a few words while everyone else watched. And my wife's silence wasn't confusion. It was permission. As the laughter faded, I realized something cold and steady settle inside me. He wasn't joking. He was asserting dominance. I told myself to step outside, to clear my head before anger betrayed me. The balcony was quieter. The city lights stretched out like a distraction I desperately needed. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cool air, reminding myself that humiliation didn't equal truth. That lie lasted less than a minute. Through the glass doors, I saw them, my wife and Victor, standing too close near the edge of the room. Not close like coworkers sharing a joke. Close like people who already knew where the other's hands belonged. She tilted her head when she laughed, the same way she used to with me. His hand brushed her lower back, lingering a second too long to be accidental. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and just chose not to care. I watched her say something softly. Victor leaned in, his smile changing, less polished, more familiar. She didn't pull away. She smiled back, slow and private, like they were sharing something the rest of us weren't invited into. My chest tightened. I stepped back inside just as she moved away from him, phone in hand. A second later, my own phone buzzed in my pocket. Instinct made me check it. A message preview flashed on her screen across the room, just long enough for me to read 2 words as she tilted it toward herself. Later, upstairs, the sound in the room dulled, like someone had pressed a mute button on my life. My hands felt cold. My thoughts scattered, replaced by a single, unbearable clarity. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't insecurity. This was happening. Flashbacks came uninvited. Late nights she blamed on deadlines. Sudden weekend retreats. Her irritation when I asked simple questions. The way she protected her phone like it held her pulse. I had explained all of it away because believing felt easier than confronting. Victor passed me then, close enough that I caught his cologne. He leaned toward her and whispered something I wasn't meant to hear. 5 minutes, he said. Same place. She nodded, calm, certain. I stood there as people laughed around me. Glasses clinking, music playing, life continuing as if nothing inside me had just shattered. My face didn't change. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. But something collapsed quietly in my chest, like a structure that had finally admitted it was built on lies. In that moment, I didn't just lose trust. I realized how long I had been replaced and how comfortable they both were, pretending I didn't exist at all. The strange thing about betrayal is that it doesn't always arrive with chaos. Sometimes it brings a terrifying calm. I felt it settle over me as I stood there, surrounded by music and laughter, while my marriage quietly ended a few feet away. I could have confronted them. The words were ready, sharp and furious. I could have torn the room apart with the truth, but anger would have given them exactly what they expected, proof that I was small, emotional, disposable. So I chose something else. Silence. I straightened my jacket, lifted my glass, and walked back into the crowd like nothing had changed. Every step felt deliberate, controlled, dignified. If Victor wanted a spectacle, he wouldn't get it from me. I thought about what self-respect actually meant. It wasn't shouting. It wasn't begging for honesty from people who had already chosen deception. It was knowing when to speak and when to wait. Lies collapse best when they're allowed to stand unsupported. Victor noticed the shift before my wife did. He grew louder, bolder, his jokes sharper now that he believed he had one. He laughed with confidence, brushing past me once with a smirk that said, "You know your place." His arrogance was no longer subtle, it was careless. My wife, on the other hand, kept glancing my way. She searched my face for cracks, for anger, for suspicion. When she didn't find any, unease crept into her expression. She asked if I was enjoying myself. Touched my arm like she used to, too late. To rehearse, "I'm fine," I said. It was the truth, just not the one she expected. Inside, something had shifted. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was observing. Every look between them, every assumption Victor made about my ignorance, every lie my wife told with increasing urgency. They thought silence meant weakness. They didn't realize silence was preparation. I reminded myself of who I was beyond this room, beyond this marriage, beyond their performance. The man standing quietly in the corner was not powerless, he was patient. And patience, I had learned, terrified, arrogant people more than rage ever could. As Victor raised his glass again, drawing attention with another confident laugh, I felt it clearly. The moment was coming. Not loud, not dramatic, just undeniable. I took one last slow breath, grounding myself in the truth they didn't know I carried. Tonight wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was about timing. And soon, very soon, they would understand why I hadn't said a word. Victor was mid-laughed when I finally spoke, not loudly, not angrily, just enough to cut through the noise like a blade sliding from its sheath. "Victor," I said, setting my glass down. "May I have a moment?" The confidence on his face didn't fade at first. It never did until it had to. He turned, amused, expecting another quiet nod, another harmless response from the man he'd already dismissed. "Yes," he said, smiling for the audience. "What can I do for you?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult him. I simply reached into my jacket and placed my phone on the table between us. The screen already lit. "I believe this concerns me," I said. The smile slipped when he saw the screen. Displayed clearly was a company portfolio, his company's portfolio, with a familiar investment firm listed at the top. My firm, my name, majority stakeholder. A few heads leaned in. Whispers started, then stopped. Victor straightened. "It does," I interrupted gently. "You've spoken to my legal team. You've benefited from our capital, and in case there's any confusion," I tapped the screen once more, pulling up the signed documents. "I'm the final authority on whether your expansion project continues." The room went still. My wife rose beside him, color draining from her face as realization struck. She looked at me now, not with indifference, not with control, but with fear. Victor laughed once. A short, uncertain sound. "This is a joke." I met his eyes. No shouting, no threats. Just truth, spoken at the exact right moment. As murmurs erupted behind me, and Victor stood frozen, I realized the shift had already happened. The power was no longer his. And this was only the beginning. The room buzzed with whispers, eyes darting between Victor and me. His usual poise had vanished, replaced by a mixture of shock, panic, and disbelief. Colleagues approached him cautiously, murmuring questions, scanning documents, and checking emails. Every carefully constructed layer of his confidence was crumbling in real time, and I watched silently, letting it happen. Victor's charm, his arrogance, the air of invincibility he carried into the room, they were all gone. Within minutes, I could see the subtle signs of professional collapse. His assistant avoiding eye contact, his peers whispering in corners, HR quietly gathering evidence. The very empire he had built on intimidation was starting to shift beneath him. And then my wife approached. Her voice was trembling, soft, pleading. "Eye on eye, it's not what you think." We didn't mean. I stopped her with a calm gesture. No raised voice, no rage, just clarity. "I saw everything," I said. "I know the truth. There's nothing left to explain, nothing to justify." Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't enough to erase the betrayal. Her words faltered as she searched my face for any hint of the man she had once claimed to love. There wasn't one. The hurt was hers to carry now, not mine. I felt the weight of the years we had shared, of every small kindness and every unspoken compromise. But I also felt the relief of finally stepping out of the shadows of lies and manipulation. No confrontation, no drama, just the undeniable clarity that comes when truth stands unchallenged. Victor retreated, trying weak smiles, attempting excuses, but no one listened. The room's energy had shifted entirely. Colleagues who had once laughed at me now looked at me with respect, even admiration. My silence had spoken louder than their chatter ever could. I turned away from them both, from the chaos, from the pain, and took a deep, steadying breath. My heart was heavy, yes, but it was unburdened. I didn't glance back. There was nothing left to salvage, nothing left to fight for. Outside, the night air hit me like freedom. The city lights stretched endlessly before me, a reminder that life continued without them, without betrayal, without compromise. I walked down the steps of the hotel slowly, deliberately, each step a statement of strength. I was still standing. I was still whole, and I would not let anyone, no wife, no lover, no arrogant boss, diminish my worth again. Tonight was over, but tomorrow, I would be stronger. I stood alone on the quiet street outside the hotel. the sounds of the party fading behind me. The cold night air hit my face, sharp and cleansing, and for the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. The events of the evening replayed in my mind not like a nightmare, but like a lesson etched into every corner of my being. I had been humiliated, dismissed, and betrayed. I had watched the person I trusted most with my heart smile at another man, touch him, whisper secrets meant to exclude me, yet, through it all, I had kept my composure. I had not yelled, not begged for explanations. I had allowed the truth to speak for itself, and in that silence, power had shifted. There's a lesson in that silence I want you to understand. Silence is not weakness. It is discipline. It is the quiet strength that allows lies to crumble under the weight of honesty. Rage might feel righteous, but it rarely wins. Patience, clarity, and self-respect. These are the weapons that truly dismantle arrogance and betrayal. Love without boundaries invites betrayal. I had loved freely, without expectation, without caution, and it had cost me. But love without boundaries does not mean accepting disrespect, nor does it mean remaining silent when your dignity is trampled. True strength is knowing when to walk away and when to let the consequences fall where they may. Respect, once lost, is rarely restored. I cannot undo the trust she broke, nor can I pretend that the man Victor had become deserved my silence or forgiveness. What I could do, and what I did, was reclaim my own power, my own worth, and my own life. And that is something no one, not my wife, not Victor, not anyone else can take from me. Walking away is not defeat, it is victory. It is the assertion that your value is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you honor yourself. I walked away that night knowing I had not only exposed the truth, but also protected my soul from being diminished any further. To you reading this, have you ever been underestimated because you stayed silent? Have you ever felt betrayed and wondered if anger or confrontation was the only answer? Sometimes, the most powerful choice is to hold your dignity, let the truth unfold, and walk away when the time comes. I want you to think about that. Reflect on your own boundaries, your own self-respect. Are you allowing someone else to define your worth? Are you tolerating betrayal because it is easier than confrontation? Share your story. Comment below. Someone else reading your experience might find the courage to reclaim their life, to stand firm in the face of disrespect, and to understand that silence is not submission, it is strategy, because in the end, the truth always comes out. And when it does, those who betray will falter, and those who honor themselves will rise. So I ask you, would you expose the truth, or walk away with dignity? Your choice defines your strength.